Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Mitch from We in Tennessee. And today I wanted to talk about something serious and just give you a lot of information, especially those of you that want to move to Tennessee and you're concerned about tornadoes. So tornadoes have been in the news lately, and I just wanted to give you guys as much information as you can to make a good decision. Now, we did not factor in tornadoes at all when we decided to move to East Tennessee. It just wasn't on our radar, but if it is on your radar or you just want something to think about or have information, then this is going to be your video. So I first want to start off by saying our thoughts and prayers are for all of our Tennesseans that have gone through tornadoes this week. It's been pretty bad, especially in the western and middle Tennessee. And so today, with all this information, I definitely don't want to forget those that have gone through some definite pain and suffering and even death this week with those tornadoes, not only in Tennessee, but other places too. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to be looking at some data and showing you some maps and then just giving you some information on tornadoes and Tennessee. Okay, this first one's going to be the entire map of Tennessee. And this is going to be since 1950. And this is showing you where tornadoes have been recorded from 1950 to 2025. And so what you're looking at here is the majority of tornadoes in Tennessee are going to occur in the western and central, or middle, as we call it, Tennessee. And you can see in the darker reds where you're getting a lot of reported tornadoes. So if you look in the middle here, this 57, that's going to be Wilson County. And then right above it, you're going to see Sumner County, which just had their tornadoes this week. So, you're looking at the upper middle Tennessee. And then as you go towards the bottom or western Tennessee, we have Shelby County in the lower left over there with 56. And then, you have to take this with a grain of salt. You have to think 75 years, these numbers are relatively low compared to other states, but definitely, and I'm gonna show you in a second, 2011, it doesn't necessarily matter how low these numbers are because just one can definitely affect your life. But definitely interesting over here in East Tennessee is look at the numbers, how they drastically go down. I mean, you're looking at 3s and 7s and 4s and 2s. And so that's super interesting. And I'm going to try to touch on why those numbers are so low going into East Tennessee. But let's go ahead now and take a look at an interesting thing that I thought. I mean, if you look at 2011, look at the difference there was a definite outbreak, and you would consider Tennessee like in the Dixie Alley, if you've ever heard the expression tornado alley. There really isn't a definition for tornado alley. There's just a likelihood for those states like Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas. But there really isn't any definition, and Tennessee would be considered in the Dixie Alley here. But look at 2011. There were 106. There was a huge outbreak of tornadoes. And look, the huge amount was in East Tennessee. 62 reported tornadoes and, 38 in Middle Tennessee and only 6 in West Tennessee. So, before you think, hey, Mitch, are you claiming that East Tennessee is safer or, is safe? By all means, no. I mean, you can see how the numbers can shift, and East Tennessee definitely gets their share of tornadoes. So that's just interesting as far as that graph goes. But let's go ahead now and just take a look at the numbers as far as West, Middle, and East Tennessee as far as the total amount. So West Tennessee would have had 416 tornadoes in those 75 years. Middle Tennessee would have 725 tornadoes, and East Tennessee 257 tornadoes in those 75 years. So you can see how the numbers drastically are lower for East Tennessee. Now what I want to do is go to something super interesting and now break it down by those of us that live in East Tennessee. Let's break it down now by county. So if we strictly kind of zoom in on East Tennessee, um, so right now I live in Maryville, and that would be in Blount County. So that would be in the yellow where it's 15, and then right above would be Knox County, which has Knoxville. That's 15 also. So that's we definitely get our share in that 75 years. So we're definitely not safe or protected or somehow immune from getting tornadoes. We get them, in here also. But look at Campbell County. Interesting, right? One tornado in 75 years. That's pretty good. And then, you're going up to Hancock and Cocke County, Hamblin and Hawkins. Union would have 2. And so, looking at this, it's just interesting to look at the numbers and go, is this geographic on why some are getting 2s and some get 15? It's hard to tell. But now let's touch on why East Tennessee might get less tornadoes. And there is no scientific reason, like a foolproof reason. I've done my research. I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm going to give it my shot here, and you see, or you tell me how this sounds. We in East Tennessee, we get the scientific conclusion that the Smokies protect us from getting a lot of these tornadoes. And that is partly true. Here is why. And you have to kind of understand the whole concept of how tornadoes form. Definitely, and this is so funny because, I was going to call it the Gulf of Mexico and Trump calls it the Gulf of America. Whatever one you want to call it, the warm, moist air comes from the Gulf of Mexico or America, and it's going to basically mix with the colder air coming in from Canada or over the Rocky Mountains. And when those two mix, those are what, basically create those tornadoes, the thunderstorms, and the definite, just the climatic interaction that we're going to get a lot of that tornado activity. And definitely, and that's why the Kansas, Oklahomas are going to be in that tornado alley, because that's where those two air masses meet. And it's kind of that perfect storm of those two meeting together, creating they call it tornadic activity. Now, what's going to happen with the Smokies, and when the moist air comes over the Smokies, what it's going to do is cause that unstable moist air to become cooler and more stable. And what that's going to do is make it less likely that a tornado is going to occur as that warm air goes up the Smoky Mountains. It becomes colder and more stable. And so when it meets the colder air, now you don't have that violent collision of those two air masses. And so, yes, that does decrease the likelihood of our tornado in East Tennessee, but it does not exclude us from the possibility. So I don't know if I explained that super well, but for those of you that are trying to kind of wrap your head around why it's safer in East Tennessee, that's the best scientific explanation after looking hours and hours of trying to figure out that reason. That just makes it safer for us, but not 100% foolproof. And so just knowing where some of you have either family or where you're living, I know Chattanooga, the reason why they might receive more tornadoes than East Tennessee, or we're looking at these counties, is they don't necessarily get that protection from the Smokies. And so that would be, Chattanooga would be in Hamilton County. And so they're going to see a little bit more tornado activity than East Tennessee. I mean, Chattanooga is considered East Tennessee, but just not further north. So this is super interesting. I hope you're finding this very intriguing on tornadoes in Tennessee. And so it's just interesting how in the early, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Tornado Alley was considered more, Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, more central United States. And as we're looking at the likely, where tornadoes are occurring, there is a shift more towards now the Dixie Alley, where we're seeing them now in Alabama, Louisiana, in Tennessee, Arkansas. And so, why the shift? I don't know, but it's just interesting to kind of see how things have evolved weather-wise. And so, guys, I just wanted today to share for those of you that are considering moving to Tennessee and you're trying to wrap your head around tornadoes and where should you live if you're thinking about that. Um, you know, it's easy to say, well, Mitch, why should you even worry about that? Because, I've never been in one. I don't know how scary they are. But if somebody has been through one, they would definitely be choosing to, hey, let's move to Eastern Tennessee where it would be safer, less likely. I get that, but for me, it was never on our radar. It was just being closer to Virginia to visit my wife's parents. It was closer to University of Tennessee if our kids wanted to go to college, which they didn't, never went there, but that's okay. And then definitely being close to the Smokies. It was definitely on our radar to do that, but that's all, a nice package when you think about tornadoes, that those Smoky Mountains definitely have caused it to be less likely. But by all means, do we not sit there? And you guys know over the last month where we've had some action, we don't feel like, hey, we're untouchable. It's just a little less likely that we're going to see them. So, okay, guys, I think I've rambled on enough. Hopefully you took a lot of information away from this and it was super helpful if you want to make that decision where you're going to live. Obviously, you weigh out the pros and cons of where do you reside. Just this week, even Nashville had its share of flooding. And so, there really is no foolproof, you're going to live in the United States. There's a chance you might see a tornado, a hurricane. You just have to, leave it up to God and go, hey, wherever we move, we know hopefully God will keep us from those things, but that's life, guys. You just can't escape bad situations when they occur, especially with weather. And so, you just have to prepare, be, wise, and hopefully be safe. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope again that you took away a little nugget of information. It was super enlightening to me, and I feel like I'm more educated about it. So thanks again. I will see you in my next video.